Welcome, dear brothers and sisters, to those who follow this team's work daily and those who are joining us now. Today, we want to talk about the war that seems to be brewing in Europe and the prophecies of how this negative event will transform the world positively. It seems very clear that dark forces want to start a war to definitively establish a Luciferian civilization. However, prophecies indicate that a spiritually renewed world will emerge from this war because God brings good out of all evil. Prophecies say that Europe will be invaded from the outside, but the great monarch will appear and expel the invaders in a supernatural event. In between, the great warning sent by God will occur, and all of this will produce a spiritual renewal in the nations, their conversion, and their commitment to peace. Here, we will talk about the great monarch, the spiritual renewal of the world, and the conversion of Russia and the United States, and we will show an extraordinary sign that heaven sent that this is already underway. First of all, we want to remind you to subscribe to this channel by activating the little bell and to our newsletter. On the screen, you will see how to collaborate with our broadcast on Patreon and on YouTube itself, so that this Catholic team from the Americas can continue financing its research. Currently, there is a dark force trying to lead the world to a great conflagration, possibly nuclear. But even if it were nuclear, we know that not the whole world will be destroyed, because Christ would not return if there was nothing to return to. The conflict between Israel, Iran, and in Palestine has been pointed out by Catholic mystics as a possible trigger for a great war. For example, Father Stefano Gobi spoke of a terrible crisis that would erupt in the heart of the Holy Land. Saint Nilus, in the 6th century, prophesied a time of wars that would arise in sacred lands. And the war between Russia and Ukraine especially reflects prophecy about the role of Russia in global conflicts. Our Lady of Fatima, in 1917, warned, Russia will spread its errors throughout the world, causing wars and persecutions of the Church. And Sister Elena Aiello, in the 1950s, said, Russia will march on all the nations of Europe, especially Italy, and raise its flag over St. Peter's. Although this seems to refer mainly to the past, Russia's aggressive manifestations today are seen as part of this warning. And today, the war in Ukraine threatens to escalate with the participation of NATO and other global powers. In Europe, there are countries that are in a war zone. Russia says that France and the United Kingdom have declared war against them, while the possible alliances between Russia, China, and Iran further complicate the situation, increasing fears of a larger conflict. But will there be a third world war? Our Lady mentions in Garabandal that there would not be a third world war. Some interpret that as absolute, while others believe that she was referring to the context of the Cuban Missile Crisis in the 1960s. And in Medjugorje, Our Lady apparently reiterated in 1982 that there would not be a third world war. Perhaps something nuclear will happen, but not in a massive way. There could be some isolated nuclear attacks. Some modern mystics have mentioned that some missiles could hit the United States, the United Kingdom, or France. Russia, for example, has warned that it could submerge the United Kingdom under the waves with a Poseidon nuclear weapon, creating radioactive tsunamis. And there are ancient prophecies that say that Great Britain would be flooded under the waters. And in Fatima, Our Lady said that several nations would be annihilated. The truth is that the prophecies suggest a period of great tribulations for Europe, and humanity will also see the grace of the Great Warning. In that context, the war will serve as a catalyst for spiritual and political renewal led by the Great Monarch. They predict that Russia will invade Western Europe, starting from the east and north, while Mohammedan forces. They will occupy important parts of southern Europe by crossing the Mediterranean, and before this occupation, the Great Monarch will appear. He will be of French origin and will be called Henry V of the Cross. He will lead the spiritual and political renewal of Europe and the territorial reconquest against the hostile forces. He will not only be the King of France, but a kind of universal monarch who will govern over the Catholic faithful, uniting various nations in a spiritual and political alliance. He will have the special support of a cousin of his, a king of Spain. Russia will be defeated in the confrontation with the Great Monarch and his allies, among them the United States, but this will be providential because it will mark its conversion. And after its conversion, Russia will ally with the United States and the Great Monarch to expel the Islamic invaders who will want to stay. Alongside the Great Monarch, Russia will then lead the restoration of the Christian order in Europe, expelling the Mohammedans and restoring peace. This change of position will be the result not only of political and military factors, but of a significant spiritual transformation that has already begun. This conversion of Russia is aligned with the revelations of the Virgin of Fatima, who asked for the consecration of Russia to her Immaculate Heart and foretold its conversion, and therefore it will be a victory of the Immaculate Heart of Mary and a testimony of divine intervention in human affairs. According to a colloquium between Javier Reyes-Errol and Dr. Peter Howard, based on prophecies by Michel de Nostradame and other mystics, the United States will play a crucial role in supporting the Great Monarch in his mission to restore Europe after the conflicts. Although there are also mystics who do not mention the United States intervening in the conflict, and how it is that the United States would make such an important turn from exporting anti-Christianity to defending Christianity in Europe. The United States will face internal conflicts, natural disasters, and loss of global influence, but some prophetic texts allude to the arrival of a great president, comparable in impact to historical figures such as George Washington or Abraham Lincoln. This leader could play a crucial role in the resistance against the forces of evil and in the promotion of peace and justice, and will work decisively to dismantle the power of globalists and other enemies of humanity. Will it be Trump or his successor? And in this context, it is worth mentioning a strange sign that recently happened to Dr. Peter Howard that could be a supernatural indicator of this process. He was in France on a pilgrimage to Lourdes, and a French man of about 60 years old approached him, asked him if he was Dr. Peter Howard, and gave him an envelope and said that it would soon make more sense. Inside the envelope was a legend that said the prophecy of the monarch Henry V of the Cross, and there was also an image of Howard holding a miraculous medal and a kind of magnet with the initials HB and a colored cross. When Howard asked him his name, he simply said, "That doesn't matter," and left. No one knew him. This seems to be an announcement of the great monarch Henry V of the Cross, and also recalls when Constantine had the vision of the symbol of the cross with the words, "With this sign you will conquer." Perhaps this symbol is a sign that the arrival of the great monarch is imminent and that this has been sent by God. And what should we do while these prophecies are fulfilled or discarded? Our Lady said that fasting can stop wars and that the rosary can bring peace. Therefore, these are things that we must do seriously. Well, this is what we wanted to talk about regarding how the war that will probably happen in Europe will produce a spiritual awakening and a spiritual realignment of the great nations. Now, if you liked what we shared and analyzed, mark that you liked this video and please share it with your friends and leave us your comment about what you think of the topic. And I would like to ask you if you believe that Russia has already begun its conversion process or not yet.